for what a company would really experience with a supplier and a customer and all these things. I mean, what did you see as far as that goes?
He had all of these real world scenarios plugged in, and like you said, the supplier, but what he built into it is, depending on what the team selected, that would then bring in or take out some complexity. When it came to the crunch, their times and the quality certainly reflected that there's a bigger picture there to look at.
Still, I would highly encourage you to attend, bring your whole team with you, and use this day as a great learning experience. I'm not sure you can get this same level of learning in any classroom or any plant tour or any keynote speaker or workshop. I think this is very unique.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. This is a special episode because I was able to sit down with two people who were part of the Lean Excellence World Championship this year at the Lean Solutions Summit, both John Dyer and Andy Olrich, who were part of the competition. John actually put together all of the intricate details, the creative solutions, the challenges, everything that went into this particular competition. John Dyer put all of that together, and then he actually facilitated the competition for the second year in a row. Andy Ulrich was one of our judges during the competition, and he did an amazing job and just worked his way around to all four of the teams that were competing against each other, gathered a lot of really, really great information. So I'm excited for you to listen in as I interview these two individuals who took a huge part in the competition this year and just talking about the details, the learnings, the challenges, and what we have in store for next year. So enjoy this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. So Andy, you had the opportunity to experience the Lean Excellence World Championship. In fact, you not only experienced it, you were involved, you were a judge, you were able to kind of work your way around and meet with all four teams that were competing against each other. Tell us a little bit about your experience at the Lean Excellence World Championship.
It was so much fun. I was here last year and got to watch the competition, but yeah, being a judge was a whole nother level. It was so much fun just seeing how the teams were getting thrown into the challenge and just the many different ways that they were working together. The way that the thing that probably stood out the most for me was, although they all had the same challenge, there was some quite different ways that they approached some of the things like the process mapping and some of those other activities. So it was really interesting how they were kind of getting through the same steps, but they might have moved the orders around, and just some of the different approaches just shows how broad this continuous improvement place could be, depending on where you come from or what tools and things you like to use, especially under pressure. So I was doing really well it's hard for me to sometimes not talk, believe it or not. So that's the other challenge for me was I had some really great notes, some scoring material that we had to run through some of the categories, and I wasn't allowed to speak to the teams. I could speak to the hosts, and they're looking at me and wondering, who's this guy with the board, and he's just looking and not saying anything. So it was so much fun, but it was just such a great thing to be a part of. And when it came down to the winners, there wasn't much in it. So it was a tough job.
Yeah. So when you started kind of moving yourself around and watching how each of these teams were working through utilizing lean tools and just working together, team dynamics, everything, did you see, like, when they went to apply a lean tool of sorts, I mean, was it applied the same every time? Was it a lot different when they were under pressure? I mean, what did that look like? Did you see some different things that you had never seen before,
Yeah, so I touched on it a bit, but yeah, it was really like when they were kind of pushed into that corner and they fell back on their tried and true tools and systems. But there was a couple of teams, one of them that only met to get each other for the first time that day.
That's right.
So there was a little bit of back and forth around, we're going to use this tool. Let's do some 5S. And then someone said, we do 3S, right? And then it was like, okay, we'll do it like this. And just the little nuances on how, as I said, how they've done it previously. It was really cool to see that, but there'd be that team dynamic, as you said, that they would have to kind of work together. There was a team lead that would kind of bring the team together and say, right, well, here's some ways we could do it. What do we think now, so we can get going and apply what's going to work? So, yeah, there was lots of things like standard work and those foundational tools and methods. But yeah, just the application of, and some of the teams actually had to get someone to draw it or write it down. They're like, I think I know what you mean, write it down. And then they'd all have a bit of a look and go, okay. So, yeah, it was quite fascinating, as I said, to see they're trying to work through the similar steps and processes, but there's quite a few different ways they were trying to slice and dice it. But yeah, in the moment, they just said, look, but you're going to have to stick with something. So let's just go and give it a try and let's see what happens. And even between the rounds, so they had a round where they had to execute, and then they had some reflection, and then they went again. Some of the tools changed quite a bit. Either wasn't connecting well enough with the team, or they worked out that, that type of tool probably didn't work. Let's try something else. So, yeah.
What did you see as far as like challenges like that each of the teams faced? Did you see any specific challenges that were a little bit more difficult for the teams to accept and be able to continue forward, that they had to like really work through?
Yeah. So it was a masterpiece how John Dyer had designed this game and set it up. But when they were in the moment, one of the key things they needed to do was to engage the customer, get the voice of the customer.
Sure.
And I won't give it too much away, but if they engaged with that customer more, they would get more specific feedback, which would get them closer to the quality requirements that they needed to meet. Mm-hmm. If they kind of said, oh, hey, quickly, just tell us quickly what you want. And I had some feedback from some of the customers saying, well, they only asked me one question and walked away. That came back to grab them when they were putting these things up for the customer to do the QA check and approval, and they were just saying they were getting the same back. They're saying, no, it doesn't meet the spec, send it back. Whereas the others who had engaged and gone through that to make sure that they were not only speaking to the customer, but the teams that really got going well, they were documenting that. They were writing it up on a board, and then they were able to then go and look at the suppliers as well and go, well, is this supplier going to meet these requirements? So again, they were getting dazzled a bit in the tools, some of them, instead of, hang on a second, who are we making this for?
Right.
We should ask them. So that's where I found it was really great. Like some of the teams, as I said, the ones who got going well and met the spec sooner, they really engaged deeper with the customer. The other ones who just got into trying to get into the technical and let's just get busy and look busy. No disrespect to the teams. Like I felt sorry for them. They were really thrown into the challenge.
Sure.
But that just, again, that totally gave them that realization that, yeah, we need to talk to the customer a bit more before we get too carried away.
Right. And it seems like what you're explaining, and obviously I was there, so I was able to see a lot of this, but for those that are listening in that were not there, I mean, it seems like John did a great job at making this as realistic as possible for what a company would really experience with a supplier and a customer. Yeah. and all these things. I mean, what did you see as far as that goes? Obviously, you just explained kind of the voice of the customer and the power of that. But what about other things that maybe, like from the supplier standpoint, that were really interesting to watch and so closely related to the reality of what we really experience?
Yeah, as I said, it was a masterpiece. The way John, I said to someone, oh, he's just slammed the trap shut. Like he had all of these real world scenarios plugged in. And like you said, the supplier, for those who weren't there or haven't seen it before, they built into the system that there's two suppliers. One was known as high quality, and the other was a cheaper price. But what he built into it is, depending on what the team selected, that would then bring in or take out some complexity. So if they went just for the cheapest price, that was fine, but the materials would turn up sometimes not on time, or they'd be mixed in with lots of other things, or they'd have an issue with it. And when they went back to see the supplier, he had an out to lunch sign up. So showing that real world supply chain issue, if you get the cheapest price, the service delivery is usually missing. Whereas if they went for the more premium or the more at cost impactful supplier, when they had an issue, they could actually get and talk directly to the supplier and they would act quickly. They would get the materials turned up right the first time, even sorted into the right mixes for the products that they needed to make. So, yeah, supply chain is such a challenge. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, if they just went in and it's all about the cheapest price, they learnt pretty quickly that there's a bit more to it. And there was a couple of teams going, I knew we shouldn't have gone for the cheapest price. We should have paid that little bit extra, which they had to do in time. So if they went for a higher service level, it would be 5 seconds added to their time, those sorts of things. So, yeah, it really nailed home, as I said, voice of the customer, the importance of being connected to the customer value, but also when it comes to your critical upstream and downstream of your supply chains, that's a really key consideration as well. So anyone who just jumped in and was all about the tools and looking smart from a lean perspective, when it came to the crunch, their times and the quality certainly reflected that there's a bigger picture there to look at.
Right. So the other question that I had was at the end, did the outcome of the competition surprise you based on, the time that you spent with all the teams, or do you feel like you kind of knew as things were moving along who was going to be the winner of the competition?
Yeah, I'll sit on the fence here a little bit. It was hard because when they first got going, I was looking at some teams going, oh, wow, these guys, yeah, sorry, but it just doesn't look good. But then come to the second round, as they sort of worked through the scenarios that John had built into the system, and then having the suppliers and the customers played fantastic roles as well. They really jumped in and went along with the program. The teams that actually reflected well as a group took down notes on lessons learned, did some Kaizen and added some things in. Their performance in the second round was the team that came dead last was actually the first team to get a quality product through.
That's right.
The second round. So their improvement by the numbers was far greater than those initial teams. And it was really close. Like there was only 2 points separating first and second after all that. It was just really fascinating to see how some teams that we thought were just absolutely underwater, and this one team actually hadn't, as I said, they'd only met each other for the first time, and a couple of them were from Alaska and their flights didn't get in until 9:30 that morning, all this sort of crazy stuff that was going on. Gee, they really pulled together and shone that second round, and they put the others right under the pump. They were pretty nervous. They were thinking that they were miles away, and then, here they come. So, and that's it, right? The teams that can pivot, get together as a group and reflect well and put in some problem solving and some solutions and give it a go. They nearly caught him in the finish.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun watching everything kind of work through, and the outcome was, I think it was surprising to me because, to your point, it maybe in the beginning we thought maybe there was some, going to be some winners, some teams that stood out, but it definitely got really close towards the end. And I was, when Team Gentex won it, all the teams did great.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure that it was interesting to me to see that, they did amazing, and every team did so good. And every team had its own kind of points that stood out in the competition. But would you say, like, next year, if Team Gentex comes back to kind of defend their championship, if you were talking to other teams out there right now that were like, oh, this sounds a little interesting, the Lean Excellence World Championship, should we compete? This is a team of 6 people that come from each company, or, could be different industries, whatever it might be, but 6 people that compete against 4 other teams of 6 people. So if Gentex was coming back next year and they're going to defend their championship, what would you say to those that are like kind of thinking about coming and actually trying to win the Lean Excellence World Championship?
I'd say definitely give it a go. What do they say? When the hunter becomes the hunted. So they won and they were pretty happy, but I think they know, there's someone coming for them. So it will be different next year. The scenario will be different.
Right.
Every year we change it up. But I strongly encourage you to come and give it a go. Buy into it, because you have a chance, regardless of what industry you're from or what sort of skill level. It was more around the team dynamic and how well they could connect with the customer and the supply chain. It certainly wasn't all about the technical tools. So give it a go. You will have a ball, and you will learn through doing the whole way through. So that was the main bit of feedback I got from the teams. So we kind of do this stuff, or we've done a bit of that, but oh wow, didn't we just walk through the door? Mm-hmm. And Everyone had a bit of fun. Yes, there can be only one winner, but as you said, everyone else, it was a sensational effort.
It was, yeah. Andy, I so much appreciate you coming all the way from Australia to be at the summit and then be a judge in the competition. We appreciate your involvement and look forward to having you back next year.
I would love to do that. Thanks, mate.
Well, hello, John. It's been a little while since we saw each other last at the 2025 Lean Solutions Summit. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It was a great conference. I enjoyed being there.
Well, we enjoyed having you. This was the second year that we've had you back, and obviously, there's reason why we invite you back every year. The workshops, the competition, the speaking opportunities, that people just love to hear from you. They love to get involved with your workshops, and the workshops themselves are always super creative. I mean, you have like a knack for just putting the right hands-on activities with the right material, and the learnings are just amazing. So thank you for what you do for all of those that are attending the Lean Solutions Summit.
Well, I appreciate that. I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing those aha moments when people, it's one thing to explain something to someone, but when they get a chance to do some sort of a hands-on activity, and all of a sudden it's like the light bulb goes off, and then they internalize it, because they'll never forget that, right? They'll never forget that activity. It'll be like, oh, this is when we did X, Y, and Z, 5 years ago. That's when I finally got to see what this concept was really all about.
Yeah, so true. I mean, everybody learns in different ways, right? But there's just something different when you can take a simulation or some kind of a hands-on activity, combine that with what you're learning in the classroom, and it's just like the light bulbs start to go off, and it makes sense. And then I love, from there, then you take it out to the real world, and you're like, okay, remember that concept, remember that simulation. Now let's go apply it in the real world, and that's when the learnings really, are solidified.
Yeah, exactly. And really, that was the genesis of the idea for the lean competition.
Yes.
We've all been to a lot of different conferences, and there are, some similarities from conference to conference. And I remember when you and I first spoke about this concept, and it was like, is there something new, something different that we can do to help people learn and internalize what they're seeing from the workshops or what they're seeing on the plant tours? And it was like, boy, wouldn't it be really cool if people could see teams in action, actually see different groups of people attacking a lean problem in various ways. There is no one right answer. But when you've got 4 teams of 6, lean experienced people attacking a particular problem, it's very interesting to see how they approach it, how they work through it as a group, what kind of ideas do they come up with, how do they try those ideas before getting into the actual production run, and then seeing the results of their labor. It's amazing what you can learn by observing 4 different groups doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that are listening in that don't know anything about the lean competition, we'll explain some details of it. But one of the rules is that all of your thinking has to be made visual. So there's some whiteboards, there's some butcher block paper on the walls, and I think one of the requirements this year, John, that you made was they had to have a process map, and that was actually part of their scoring, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, last year they did an as-is process map. This year we focused on the to-be or future state process map, because they were designing a production system from scratch this year.
Right.
So it was really important for them to understand what were all the elements that they needed to capture and put it into a diagram that would then help them set their production system up.
Yes. And it was pretty amazing to see the results of that. I'm going to ask you in a minute just about the different rounds and kind of what that looked like. But as far as the teams go, it was really fun to watch as the teams came together. I mean, Lean Alaska, they had a delayed flight and they arrived like the morning of and with almost no sleep, and they just hit the ground running. They were ready to roll. That was pretty awesome. I remember team JCR Off-Road, they ended up with one person short because of some things that happened back at the job site. They had to leave someone back, but Tom from Gemba Docs jumped in from Ireland, and he's like, "Throw me in on a team. I'd love to be part of this." And so it's just like things like that where it was really fun to watch these teams come together. That some of them were teams like Gentex brought a whole team from their facility. Then we had other teams that were made up of, like Lean Alaska had people from all over the US that were coming in, military members and things like this. And so it's kind of fun to see how those teams came together, right?
Oh yeah, it's been fascinating. Each team consists of 6 people, and between the 2 years that we've done this, it's been very interesting to see the various makeups of those teams, right? And how that benefits them and how that might hinder them.
Right.
In one case, we had a team that was made up of almost all shop floor employees. And they did an amazing job of analyzing the problem, really digging into it. This was in the first year. But where they fell short was that they didn't spend enough time with the customer. And that was a big aha moment for them. And, as shop floor employees, they were like, wow, we now understand why it's so important to know what our customer needs are, even if it's the internal customer, because, that really hindered our ability to get good product out the door. One other team was made up of 6 continuous improvement professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very fascinating because for the first half of their planning time, all they did was argue with each other.
Right.
It's like too many chefs in the kitchen. There was no leader. So they all thought they had the answer. And so they just kept pulling in different directions. And then once they realized that half their planning time was gone and they had not accomplished anything, that was their wake-up call. And they finally got on the same page and started pulling in the same direction, and ultimately ended up winning that first year.
First year.
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
pretty awesome to watch that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So that's
They went
one of
through
the things that's
phases,
fascinating
the
about
storming phase, the norming phase, right? You could kind of watch that happen in real time. It was pretty
exactly,
amazing.
because there's an element of pressure too. You have the clock that's ticking during the planning phase. Everybody wants to win. They want to represent their organization and go back with the trophy. It's a very nice, very well designed crystal trophy. So yeah, there is some pressure involved, and you definitely see those 4 phases very clearly throughout the planning session.
Absolutely. So walk us through the rounds, or I guess the high level structure of what these teams experience when they're part of the competition.
Right. So this year we had a brand new production system. The first year we gave them a broken production system that they then improved upon. This year we gave them a piece of IKEA furniture, and anybody who's put together IKEA furniture knows that there are a lot of steps involved, a lot of pieces involved. So it was a nightstand that we had found that had, a drawer and a door and several, shelves. So it was pretty complex. And so we gave them a piece of this IKEA furniture with the instructions on how to build it. And they had 3 hours to put together a production system to build 5 of these as quickly as possible. Now, we also explained to them that a few minutes before production began, we were going to take the instructions away. So they had to rely on visual management cues when they set up their production system in order to put this thing together, because they didn't have the instruction sheets to fall back on.
Right.
So it was really fascinating to see how each team approached this and how they, used masking tape to tape off the tables to indicate, where the screw goes on that particular piece of wood and where that wooden dowel goes, and all these really, really great visual management cues. So they had 3 hours to plan this, to put the production system together. We threw a few curveballs at them, which we always do. We want to make it interesting. So like this year, they had 2 suppliers they can choose from. Both suppliers did an amazing job of trying to sell their wares to the various teams.
Yes.
And it was interesting. 2 teams went with one supplier and 2 teams went with the other supplier. So that gives you an idea of how close they were. Now, one supplier promised them a discounted price. And that could have been a bit of a red flag. Plus, he was very slick in the things that he promised them.
He was slick.
Yeah. And so, like I said, 2 teams went with that supplier, and then they discovered during the production round that he didn't quite live up to all of their expectations.
Yes.
He was on break a lot. The purchase order process was broken. When they opened the box of parts, it was full of beads that represented packing material, those kind of things that you just don't think about when you're buying from a new supplier.
Right.
So those 2 teams were pretty upset by their choice.
Yeah.
And
interestingly, though, John, one of the teams decided to stay with that supplier going into the final round. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so that brings us to round 2. So in the first round, they were asked to build 5 units as quickly as possible. And there were a lot of quality criteria they had to meet. We had someone playing a customer, and she did an amazing job. And she checked over every cabinet very closely. Like even as an example, the door that went onto the cabinet had 4 different adjusting screws to make sure it was nice and square. So we actually used a penny to check all the gaps all the way around the door, and it had to pass the penny test or it got rejected, and the team had to go back and fix it. So that was in round 1. And then we gave them, and they didn't know this going in, that there would actually be a second round. We said, all right, we're going to give you another hour, and then we want you to run your production system a second time, building 5 more units. And the criteria for the second round was how much improvement can you make over the first round?
Right.
So, what percentage of, and that's the whole idea of continuous improvement, right? And I got to tell you, all 4 teams did an amazing job of improving their process. The average across the 4 teams of improvement was over 40% improvement in the amount of time it took to build those 5 units. But yes, one of the teams that you're talking about that was using the poor supplier, they did a great job of analyzing their first round production system and discovered that the bottleneck was not the supplier. They actually had someone that was pretty good at sorting through the beads and finding the parts and making sure that that they got the parts soon enough so that if the supplier went on break, it wouldn't impact them that greatly. So they decided to utilize their resources towards the bottleneck and break the bottleneck. And that allowed them to increase their production output significantly. And they ended up winning the second round because of that. So, yeah, and a great lesson learned. And again, there's so many terrific lessons to be learned by observing this. But that was a great lesson learned, that don't let your emotions just make your decisions for you. Instead, use data, use real data. Because I got to tell you, they were extremely ticked off at this supplier.
Oh yeah, there were
They were
definitely some
very
cuss words
upset.
thrown around.
Yeah, and they were ready to fire that supplier in a heartbeat. But when they looked at the data, it showed them that that was not the problem. And so they stuck with the bad supplier, and that ultimately ended up allowing them to win the second round.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And you talked about the learnings in observing. The cool thing about the Lean Solutions Summit is that this competition goes on during the first day. It pretty much lasts almost the whole day outside of the keynote speakers. But participants or individuals who are attending the conference have the option to be able to go see a breakout during that time, or there's also time that when they can come and observe. And I was surprised, like a lot of people started in that room and they just stayed in there because it was so intriguing to just move around to the different teams, talk to the judges, watch what was happening. I mean, it was just an amazing case study of so many different things going on at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was interesting to watch the observers because several of them got their phones out and videoed parts of it or took pictures of parts of it so they could share that with their folks back home. I had several people come up to me during the actual competition, and they were like, "Wow, this is incredible! You know how much we're taking away from this.
Yeah.
Observing the, what to do, and in some cases, what not to do, because
Right.
it's not smooth. Not all the teams are on a smooth schedule the whole time.
Right.
So sometimes it's like, wow, that's something to avoid doing. But yeah, it's a great learning experience. You mentioned judges. We do have 3 judges. I think you spoke to Andy earlier.
Hmm.
He was one of our judges, and so the scoring for the competition, like in this particular year, it was who made the 5 units the fastest in round 1. They scored a certain number of points.
Hmm.
Who won round 2 scored a certain number of points. And then how many points did each team get from the judges? The judges had a scorecard that they were using, and they were looking at 3 specific areas: teamwork, creative thinking, and the proper use of the lean tools. So they could score a certain number of points in each of those categories. And I got to tell you, this year, the score was extraordinarily close between 2 of the teams. One of the teams won round 1, one team won round 2. So coming out of that, they were even. And then one team, the yellow team, outscored the green team by 2 points on the judges' scorecard. And that's out of 185. So it was
Wow.
very, very close.
So close.
Yeah, yeah. But it was exciting, and it was very interesting to share the results at the end with the teams. They were very, um, you know, excited about the prospect of winning.
Yes, they were very competitive. Every team was very competitive in this, and that's what also made it fun. It was a fun competition, where there was some clean competition, a little bit of fun trash talking, between the teams, even among the teams. Just a really good time all around. But at the end of the day, the learnings that came out of that were just exponential. And I think about the winning team who just happened to squeeze by Gentex. They were just super happy. I mean, they were jumping up and down. They came up on stage and received their trophy, and it was a pretty awesome moment. And even the other teams were super happy for them because it was not an easy competition, right? It was a long day. It was a lot of thinking. It was draining. It was even physically demanding for a few of them. So overall, it ended up being just such a great experience. Last year was amazing. This year was just through the roof awesome.
Yeah, and the other thing that made this year really special was that at the end of the day, we ended up with 40 of these nightstands from IKEA that were all built and and passed really rigid quality standards. So these
Yes.
are very well built.
I don't know that my IKEA furniture at my house would pass the standards that we had set for these.
Right, right. Oh yeah, every bolt was tested, every seam was checked. So but at the end of the day, we ended up donating these 40 nightstands to a local charity. And they shared with us that the very next day, these nightstands were going to be in people's homes.
Yeah.
Which was very cool. So all that great work that these 4 teams didn't go to waste. It actually resulted in, uh, 40 families having a new piece of IKEA furniture in their house.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. That actually, I have to think back. I'm pretty sure that was a suggestion from Mike Rother. I think that after year one, he was like, man, you guys we did cabs on year one. And then at the end of the day, we spent hours taking these all apart, loading them back up into the U-Haul. And he's like, man, if you could only come up with a way that whatever you build doesn't have to be taken apart, but you can maybe donate it somewhere. And so that's what, John, you and I started putting our heads together around what that could look like. And I think actually Mike introduced us to this particular nonprofit that ended up taking the donations, and now they're using them for transitional housing for individuals who are working themselves out of homelessness and working through some programs to get back into being a productive member of society. And so it's a pretty amazing cause. And at the end of the day, the entire summit, everyone was able to be a part of that and be able to kind of hand those over to this organization. So pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah, and we're already starting to think about next year's. It's important that these competitions are different, right? They got to be different year to year.
Every year we got to think of something more creative, a little bit different, because we had one team that returned, and that was Zingerman. So Zingerman's was there first year, and then they came back with a returning team trying to grab that trophy. And so we do have teams that return, but also they, obviously there's lots of pictures and people talk about it. So every year we have to come up with something completely different, brand new that nobody knows. What are you thinking for this next year? Any ideas that you can, without giving too much away, any ideas for 2020?
Yeah, I like the concept that we did last year of building something that we can donate at the end. So I think we'll stick with that. I'm not sure what that will be. I don't think it'll be another piece of IKEA furniture, but something maybe similar.
Yeah.
I think what I would really like to throw at the teams for next year is something to do with Kanban systems. Last year we really focused on visual management tools and techniques. And I think next year I would really like to throw a couple of, tough Kanban type scenarios at the teams and see how creative they can be in coming up with, a new innovative Kanban approach.
I like it.
There are lots of Kanban systems out there, right? You got work weight boards, you've got 2-bin systems, you got video enhanced systems. So yeah, I'll be thinking about that.
Nice.
I can just envision trying to set up a production system that requires several steps and saying that the only way that you can communicate from step to step is by the use of a Kanban. That'd be pretty cool.
Interesting. The other thing too that I think is important to note, John, is that while we are creating production systems, we also are incorporating some more administrative type of stuff, whether it's order entry or, supplier relationships, voice of the customer, there's other things. So for those that are listening in and you say, well, we don't run a production facility, so that's not really for us. No. There are so many learnings that come out of this, and that it applies no matter what industry you're in. And if you happen to be in a government office or working for a nonprofit, organization on the administrative side of things, whatever it might be, think about this, because we're going to be putting a call out for teams for next year. And if you have a team of 6 that you think has what it takes to walk home with the trophy, we'd love to have you. So, John, anything else on that? Any thoughts on the administrative side of things, or how you incorporate maybe, anything outside of production?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. We try to make it as multidimensional as possible to incorporate lots of different aspects. So as an example, we mentioned that the teams had two suppliers to choose from. So they had to do some supplier analysis type work. They had to do negotiations on price because each supplier had different price points that they could utilize with the teams, depending on, how aggressive the teams were in trying to get a better price. We incorporated a supplier purchasing agreement process that they had to utilize in order to get their parts every turn. So again, how well did they work with their suppliers to set up this supplier agreement process, and how flawed was that? On the other side was the customer. A lot of voice of the customer kinds of things, analyzing what the customer really needs, and incorporating that into their system. So I agree that anybody can learn by going through this competition.
Absolutely. And so, as I said, we're putting a call out for teams. We only accept 4 teams every year to compete, one in each corner of the room. So if you think that you have what it takes, if you have a team of 6 that wants to come and compete in 2026, you can reach out to us, send me a note. We'd love to consider you and your team. You don't need to be experts in lean. This could be the first time some people on your team are learning about lean. What is there a better way than hands-on, this type of activity to really drive home the learning points that are coming from the conference itself? So consider that if you're thinking about it. We'd love to have you in 2026, whether you're competing on a team or coming to observe and watch the competition. Either way, you're going to walk away with a ton of really, really great learnings. John, any last comments for anyone that's listening in and wondering if they should either compete or come watch the competition at the 2026 Lean Solutions Summit?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Even if your team is not comfortable competing this year, they could very easily attend the conference as a team and observe what the teams this year are doing and analyze that. I think that would be great discussion points. Off to the side, as you're observing, you could be talking to each other about, well, what do you think that team is doing right? What could they do better? What could we learn from what that team is experiencing? And then that might get you more comfortable to compete the following year. So even if you aren't quite ready yet to compete, still, I would highly encourage you to attend, bring your whole team with you, and use this day as a great learning experience. Because again, I'm not sure you can get this same level of learning in any classroom or any plant tour or any keynote speaker or workshop. Yeah. I think this is very unique.
Very unique. Yeah. And I, again, just want to thank you, John, for all the work that you put into this every year. It just gets better and better. And the amount of time and effort that you put into it, the way that you think through every little detail just really makes this, one of the highlights of the Lean Solutions Summit. So thank you for all the work that you put into it.
Well, thank you and your staff. I tell you, Danielle that works for you, she's terrific. And, all I have to do is kind of verbalize an idea and she'll run with it and make it happen. So she's great to work with, but your whole group is terrific to work with.
I appreciate that, John. Well, we will see you in 2026 at the Lean Solutions Summit.